So today I want to talk to you guys about a very useful and cool product I've been using ever since it came out, and that's going to be the EK Water Blocks Leak Tester. This is an air pressure tester. People always ask me, aren't you afraid of your water-cooled computer leaking? Well, with this, I'm definitely not, so let's get into it. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Thank you for joining me for another video. If you like my content, subscribe, smash that like button, leave a comment below. Are you ever afraid your water-cooled computer is going to leak? So every once in a while, anytime you post a really cool water-cooled computer, people are always going to be like, isn't that thing going to be dangerous? Is it going to leak everywhere? Like, is that water in there? Like, what's actually going on? So even though it's much less nowadays, there definitely is a little bit of a misconception as well as a little bit of a fear that the system may leak or may, damage your components. And while, yes, if done incorrectly, some of that can be true, there are numerous ways to mitigate that issue and really reduce any possible risk. And the EK leak tester is one that came out a few months ago, and I've been using it on every single build just to give me that extra bit of assurance that I'm really not going to have any leaks. Now, before this, and there are other products on the market, of course, Aqua Computers has one, Dr. Drop, it does basically the same thing. So this isn't necessarily the first, it's just the first that I've tried myself consistently. Before, the way that you would, leak test a water-cooled computer would be to turn on only the pump, making sure all your other components are off, and maybe run that pump for a few hours, with some paper towels, making sure nothing leaks. And if everything looks good, generally you're good to go. Now, of course, especially if you're doing hard tubing, once in a while it is possible something wasn't in there that snug, because I know we're really excited when we're building water-cooled computers, and as you see it come together, you just want to finish, have it up, take some pictures, share it with people. So sometimes we may rush a thing or two and you could have a little bit of a leak, which was always something that I was well aware of and I wanted to avoid. So as soon as I started using this EK leak tester, any little bit of worry or anxiety that I may have had about leaking really went away. So it's actually pretty simple. So what I'll do, I'll build my entire loop, making sure everything is nice and tight. All my fittings are in, everything's connected nicely, everything's screwed down pretty good. Of course, not too tight, especially if you're using acrylic blocks, because you can actually crack them if you screw in the fitting too tight, but just tight enough where the O-ring sort of gets you that nice enclosure. So after I make sure all of my components are nice and snug, I'll leave one opening where a fitting can go in, where this EK leak tester, you basically just screw it in like you would a regular fitting. You make sure that the pump, everything's nice and tight so you don't have any air leakage. And then you literally just pump the air up. It's going to give you a little indication of, when you're in the safe zone. You'll be able to visually see that right on the little pump mechanism. You'll be able to see sort of the safe green zone where you can stay in without going too much. I'll usually go close to the upper end of that zone just to really stress my system, and they recommend at least 15 minutes leaving it on. So most of the time it will be okay. I'll do it and it's actually going to hold that pressure. I actually like to keep it there for even longer than 15 minutes just to really make sure. And of course, you have to remember all this is done before you actually put any liquid in the system. So when all the fittings are in, everything's tight. So there will be a few times where you'll see that little gauge sort of start to go down. That means that there's an air leak somewhere. And if air is leaking, there's a good chance that the water may also leak whenever you do your loop. So now if you do have an air leak, and it's happened to me a few times, it could take anywhere from a minute to a few hours to actually find out where that's coming from, because you really don't know. The air coming out is so subtle that if you don't have any liquid in there, you're not really going to be able to tell. Sometimes you can put your hand up to it, you'll feel a little bit difference in temperature because of the air rushing through, but most of the time you just have to go back and make sure every fitting is tight, and usually that'll be enough to end your problem. So after doing this air pressure test on your loop and everything holds really strongly, and if you don't change anything else, when you fill it with liquid, you're not going to have any leaks. It's almost guaranteed because the air is not coming out. So that means that water is also not going to come out. They even say you can sort of forego those longer tests of like a 24-hour leak test or something like that if you use this method, just because you're kind of ensuring that you're not going to have any water leaking through. Now, one thing that I did find out is, like I said, when you do have a little bit of an air leak before you fill it, it can take a while to find that problem. And this, even though I don't recommend it, there was a while where I did have a little bit of fluid in the loop that I was doing some maintenance on, and I wanted to check it for leaks. And of course, I turned everything off, no power, and I used the air pressure tester while I had some liquid in the loop. And believe it or not, even though I really don't think this is the recommended way of doing it, I did have a little bit of an air leak, and it became so much easier to find because I had liquid in there, because of course the water started dripping and rushing out. Not too much, but it was dripping enough. I had paper towels down, the system was off, so there was no danger. So if you do have some liquid in there, even though you're supposed to do it with no liquid, and I don't think they really recommend to do it this way, it may be a little bit easier to find where that leak is, just because you're going to have something actually coming through that you can see, especially if you have a different color coolant, like a green coolant dripping onto your white paper towel. You're going to see that pretty quick. But if it's just invisible air, it may take you a while to find that leak. I don't necessarily recommend it this way, and I usually avoid doing the air pressure test when I have fluid in the system, but sometimes there'll be a little bit of residual fluid in there. Let's say you're changing your loop around and you couldn't really drain everything because it's in the bottom radiator or something like that. So I have had that happen where the liquid is in there, and believe it or not, it's been fine. If there is a little bit of a leak, you'll see it and catch it with a paper towel. Just make sure your system's off, and it didn't seem to damage or affect anything. So overall, that was fine. It's literally just air pushing through your system. And of course, you do have to be careful if you have liquid in your system. As soon as you unscrew it, all that is going to come rushing out because of the air pressure. So what I usually do, if I have a little bit of residual liquid in there, I'll just sort of slowly unscrew it so that way the air has a chance to come out without it spewing like a geyser or something like that. So that's just something to keep in mind. But overall, after you get the hang of it, it's not a hard tool to use, and it's really, really an invaluable tool when you're doing a water loop, because you're not going to have a leak. And that's definitely a lot of peace of mind for your components, that nothing's going to get damaged when you're playing games, or it's not going to leak later on. You can even move your system around, and generally you're going to be safe. So this is definitely something that I really enjoy using, and every single water cooled build that I do, I make sure that one of my final steps before I fill it is this air pressure test. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.